Hello and welcome to Marketing Global Edition with me, Jasmine Montgomery.
And me, Piers Geiler.
So, Piers, we've got a really fun one to talk about today. The Twitter sphere, I suppose I should call it the X sphere, is going mad about the rebranding and new ad campaign from Jaguar.
Not just Twitter, everyone's going mad. I just opened my LinkedIn feed and it's all anyone's talking about. It is everywhere. The papers are on it. It's going to be on the news tonight, no doubt. It is quite something.
I wonder if our listeners in, places outside of the UK are as fascinated by this as we are. But we certainly are. And actually, we've talked to some of our international clients about it. Everyone around the world, it seems, is picking up on this story. Why are they... Okay, so, I think in terms of a podcast now, Piers, we could just instantly go into moral outrage about this. But I don't know. I mean, I think I echo quite a lot of the outrage and shock of the Twitter sphere, which is sort of summed up by people saying, hilarious. I mean, there's been some really hilarious kind of, comments, and people are talking about, it's cultural vandalism. People are incredibly up in arms from all sorts of points of view. It's the end of the Jaguar brand. This is them having their Bud Light moment. We'll talk about that more in a minute. People shocked and appalled by what they've done, killing the cat. All the way through to some pretty shocked reactions to the actual ad itself, I think, which we'll have to describe for viewers in a minute. But just, what do you think? Are you outraged too?
Look, it's typical. Something new comes on in the world of marketing and branding, and everyone gets on the bandwagon. It's so much easier to say something's rubbish. Everyone damns it, and everyone jumps on, and before you know it, everyone's trashing it because it's just so much easier. No, I'm going to defend it. I think it's brave. I mean, I will come on to some other points about it.
Yeah.
Actually, there could be a touch of genius, right? Because what are we all talking about? When's the last time we all spoke about a car brand? I can't remember the last time. It's just, it doesn't happen. It's a bit like, it's Ryanair's strategy of a pound a p. They talked about charging a pound a p, and before you know it, everyone's talking about Ryanair. And that, all right, okay, that's, negative PR in a way, but this has created a lot of value in PR, 100%.
Okay, we will definitely talk about that. I think it's a really good point. But is it a good thing, or is it sort of a British Airways? Now, the dinosaurs among us, and I include you and me in that Tyrannosaurus Rex category, will remember many years ago another great British icon, British Airways. I mean, this was the 80s or something. It was a long time ago. Rebranding their tail fins. They took the Union Jack off the tail fins and put ethnic patterns on their tail fins to represent not who they were and where they were coming from, but the destinations they flew to. It was a brave, bold decision. But Margaret Thatcher, Prime Minister at the time, I don't actually know if she was still Prime Minister, but anyway, Margaret Thatcher was still alive at the time, and she was walking past sort of the launch of it on her way into some kind of, party political thing, and saw one of the model planes with its new ethnic tail fin, and she just looked absolutely disgusted and dropped her hanky over it. And that was the end of the British Airways rebrand. Now,
it's a shame, actually, because it was actually done by Interbrand Newell and Sorrell.
Yeah, it was a good idea.
I enjoyed just at the tail end of that.
Oh, funny.
Excuse the pun. And it was like something you just didn't mention. You couldn't mention it in there. But actually, it was a bit unfair, because while the tail fins represented the country they flew to, the rest of the plane was all Brit. So it's like...
It was a good idea. It was a good idea, but is that what have Jaguar fallen into the same trap of just totally forgetting who they are? I mean, to my mind, who they are is a prestige, luxury, British heritage brand. The ad I love was the ad from, I don't know, a few years ago, where it had all these sort of villains, and it said, why is it that in films the villains are always British? And then it just showed all these villains in Jags looking ultra cool, and it kind of made the point that, if you want to run with the bad boys, they're British. We're the James Bond villains, and it was really fun because it oriented us within the kind of James Bond world, but not as a cheesy hero, but as kind of the evil but somehow sexy villain. And that was just so priceless, I thought. That's what I loved about Jaguar.
You're right. They did do a history of, they had a history of doing things differently. Okay, I mean, William Lyons was their founder, and his mantra was about doing things differently, and this whole copy nothing, which you're seeing in the ad that's coming through. But I tell you what, cars now are all starting to look the same. They're all reliable. None of them rust anymore. There's no quirks. They're all reliable, bulbous. They all look the same. And I think, it's a generic category. And all the advertising pretty much shows car going down windy road on a mountain, and then there's a shot of it three-quarter, looking at three-quarters of the car, and they all do it. So I applaud.
Okay, so hang on, just for our viewers or listeners who haven't seen the ad, because somebody might be listening to this who hasn't seen the ad, and if so, I hope you've had a really nice time lying under the rock you've been in for the last 24 hours. But let me just describe it for a second, and for our YouTube viewers, we'll probably just cut it in and show. Most importantly, there is no car.
It's more like a fashion ad.
There's no car in the ad. It's just a car ad with no car. These people parade through the ad looking incredibly edgy, cool, funky, contemporary, fashiony and diverse and multicolored. There's an absolutely beautiful shot of a young girl wearing the most incredible sort of orange chiffon dress, and it's blowing in the wind, and it's absolutely stunning. But it's like a Benetton ad, right?
But you talk about the brand. It is a great British icon, but unfortunately, it has been dying. Sales. It's owned by Jaguar Land Rover, and they sell 6 Land Rovers for every 1 Jaguar, right? So it has been a dying brand. Something needed to change, right? They've taken a really brave decision to do something different, right or wrong. But what is Great Britain today? So is it that they are reflecting what Great Britain has become in the ad of having it with such diversity and inclusiveness?
But why does anybody care about that? I mean, the thing is, why are they advertising diversity and not the driving experience? I mean, if this was an ad for their diversity and inclusivity hiring initiative, I would get it. And, I'm very pro diversity and inclusivity. Not everybody is. I am. But you don't buy a car, surely, because of its diversity play, or do you?
Well, maybe it's that the car category is dying. Is it that they want to become a lifestyle brand, a luxury brand? Because it's like cigarettes are going to change. What are they going to change into? They're all going to stop selling cigarettes at some point in 2030 or 2050. I can't remember. They're looking for a pivot of the biggest pivot in the world, and maybe Jaguar are thinking that far ahead. Who knows? Okay,
so maybe they are pivoting, because by 2030, there's a deadline for, in the UK at least, for car firms to stop selling petrol and diesel cars. So I think what they are saying is that the world is going completely electric, and that this new brand and that this new ad is for their new EV electric vehicle models. They're not actually putting any models on the road until next year, 2026. So I guess, I could understand them thinking that they're trying to position the brand for a whole new world of electric vehicles. But does buying an electric vehicle mean that one has given up on the driving experience, and that what one really wants is a lifestyle brand that connects you to, people of colour and indeterminate gender? I don't know.
No, I'm hoping it's a strategy of putting us on hold, and then they're going to launch, when they launch the new car, it will be Mini. They rebirthed Mini, and that was a fantastic success. Yeah. Fiat had a 𝐒𝐭𝐴 from the 60s. They redid that, relaunched it, fantastic success. Wouldn't it be great? VW did a Beetle, they redid it. Wouldn't it be great if they bought out their most iconic car, the E-Type Jag, and they bought out a new electric version? Then all this would be all right. It would be worthwhile, and that car would sell. But I do agree, buying a new car, is probably the most expensive branded purchase anyone ever makes. It is really, really expensive. And people want to know what the car looks like.
Yeah.
The car is the star. It always is. So
I mean,
that's what
I wonder.
that's my beef with it. I'm sorry, I don't mind what the ad has in it. It's different, it's quirky, it's great, but it needs to show the car.
Okay, so all right, couple things there. You don't mind what the ad has in it. Let me just tackle that for a second, because you are. I mean, you're less liberal than I am because you're a bit of a Tory, but you are a reasonably liberal white male living in the UK in quite a liberal culture. But we've spoken this morning, you and I, to two of our lovely clients in the Middle East. We'll only name them by their first names, but Mashari and Najla, who are absolutely horrified by this ad and say that it's in no way going to work in the Middle East, that it's culturally inappropriate and positively anti-Islamic. And hilariously, what Jaguar have done is they've actually done an edit for Saudi, but they clearly do not understand the Middle East at all, right? And I think Africa as well. From my experience, we've got offices in Africa. We know Africa well. We know the Middle East well. And parts of Asia, growing up in places like Indonesia, like, you know, they are not going to love the androgyny in this. In fact, they're going to find it very upsetting. And there's been an edit done for Saudi. There's a sort of scary blonde woman with very short hair, Bridget Nielsen kind of ferocity, and a neon yellow axe that she's clearly going to behead people with. And she's wearing a very low cut, a sort of cut out top, which reveals cleavage. So they've cut her out of a Middle East edit, which, you know, yes, it ticks the box of don't show like breasts in the Middle East. That is like marketing to the Middle East and Africa, well, the Middle East 101. But anybody who markets to the Middle East and Africa knows that they are not on board with transgender and with homosexuality and with, you know, these are things that, you know, this is not.
It's not going to help
and Kuwait are not California in terms of their attitude to these things. It is going to alienate a huge part of their international market. So that's, I think that's an issue. Certainly.
Do we know that the ad's going to be, you know, run in America and everywhere? Is it global? I mean, it's a brand film. It is called a brand film, so it is for everyone, actually.
It's on their Instagram feed, which, by the way, if anybody's looking on their Instagram feed, you'd be forgiven for asking, like, what happened to their Instagram feed? Well, you know, in a testament to the extent to which they seem to really want to kind of totally radically invent themselves, they've wiped their Instagram feed, and they still have their 17 million followers, but they only have 2 posts. One is a picture of a close-up of a car that many people are comparing to an air conditioner, and then the ad itself. So the ad has, by going on Instagram, it has gone international, and people are talking about it. People were talking about it in Kuwait this morning, right? So, but I do think something I think will be really interesting, to your point about the car design, and you want to see the car design, is I wonder, and maybe we're going to need to do a follow-up podcast to this. Maybe this is Jaguar Part 1.
Definitely.
You know, the car is launching on, what, the 3rd of December or something. You know, I think that there are lots of design cues in the ad, which when we see the car, we're going to go, ah. So our creative director, Hannah, was looking at it, and she thinks, she's too shy to come on this podcast for now, but she will do eventually, that she thinks that there are like the lighting in the tunnel that they walk through is going to reflect like the lighting on the car, and that there's going to be a lot of design cues, and even their typeface, which is very rounded. I wonder if, you know, it's going to change. Oh, and the other thing we should say in describing the ad is at the end, there is, you know, the logo, and that the logo is completely different. The logo is now a...
Yeah, what do you think about the logo? I've got a view on that as well, so go.
Tell me your view. You go ahead. I've been babbling enough. Let me just describe it. It's now logo type only. There's no cat. There's no Jaguar, and it's a sort of it's a contemporary logo type on its own.
What happened to the cat?
I'll tell you what happened to the cat. But what do you think of it?
Interestingly, I love simplicity, but I have noticed a general trend, especially with luxury brands, where they're just stripping everything out to black and white and very simple type. So the likes of Yves Saint Laurent, Burberry, you know, Balenciaga, etc. They all look exactly the same. And it's gone down that route of just overly simple. And I'm missing infantile even. I'm missing the craft of an interesting looking logo. And I think
I know why you're missing the craft. It was done by their in-house team, and I think that in-house teams are great for getting the latest Instagram post out or tactical ad. But when you're doing a rebrand, in-house teams don't do, 25 rebrands a year. They do one every 25 years. And I think that a team that was really good at understanding the vernacular of a brand identity would never have done this. First of all, let me say, they are crazy for getting rid of the Jaguar. Their name is Jaguar. There has been so much equity in that logo. I think they're absolutely mad to have killed the cat. So many brands would chew their right arm off to have the kind of symbolism, equity, a logo that you could just put the symbol, like a Nike swoosh, like an apple, on an app button, and everybody would know exactly what it was, or on a car. They are.
It's like getting rid of Captain Birdseye, isn't it?
They're
or Bertie Bassett.
They're absolute. It's madness to go and they've thrown it away for what? For some generic rub. I mean, they say it's a bespoke typeface. Honestly, it looks like Chalet, which is a sort of, Janet and John silly type. It's just bonkers. And it's not the first time they've rebranded. So they actually, interestingly, were founded as Swallow Sidecar Company in 1922, and it became SS Cars in 1934. And then, of course, in 1945, very sensibly rebranded to avoid, being linked to the SS, the Nazi SS. Great. So that was perfectly sensible. There was then the leaping Jaguar logo, which we all think of in the sort of classic cars. I mean, you're much more of a car expert than I am, but there's kind of that beautiful silver Jaguar leaping off the car was introduced as a bonnet ornament back in 1945. But and it was there for about 60 years, but eventually EU safety regulations apparently killed it off.
You see, interestingly, so while they've killed it off, Rolls-Royce, of course, had the Spirit of Ecstasy. It had the
Yes.
flying lady at the beginning that could really kill someone if if you get hit by a Rolls-Royce, I think it's going to sort of impale you and stuff. Anyway, so and in their identity, they've rebranded fairly recently, Rolls-Royce, and they didn't get rid of that. They've done the most beautiful thing. The Spirit of Ecstasy is part of, they've recreated it digitally, and it's part of the background throughout all their identity. And it's so subtle, you don't notice it, but when you see it, you never not see it.
That is so smart. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So then I'm just going to run you through the rest of my history lesson here for a minute, because I'm very proud of having done my research. In 1957, they went from the kind of the leaping Jaguar logo to the growler logo, which was kind of the roaring cat at the center of a red badge. So if you now think of a more contemporary Jaguar, you've got kind of this very fierce, big cat roaring at you. And then in 1982, it evolved to feature the name in sort of in a more regal font with the animal leaping to the left. And so what they've apparently done now is they've taken the cat out of the main logo and they've relegated it to a kind of maker's mark. I don't know what that means. I mean, I guess it means they can put it on stuff if they want to. And there has been a trend generally to the kind of disconnecting of a logo type from a symbol. So I have sympathy for that maybe the cat can be separate from the symbol. Although personally, if I had the Jaguar logo, my name was Jaguar, I'd put the cat everywhere. But I would certainly put the logo, the symbol, on my very expensive, massive budget global ad. That is somewhere I would absolutely put it. So there might be places where you'd have the logo type on its own. I don't know, if you were branding, some long thin thing as a piece of merchandise, but not on the internationally talked about ad campaign. I mean, they're completely mad.
Should we talk about the target audience?
Yes. Now, who do you think they have targeted this ad at? Because we had a hilarious conversation earlier today, Piers, you and I, with an acquaintance of ours who works in film world, and we were asking him what he thought of it, and he said, well, my drug dealer drives a Jaguar, and he'll probably really like this rebrand and this ad. Now, I don't know about you, Piers, but I don't have a drug dealer, so I can't verify this. I'm obviously not running with the cool kids because, I'm too clean for a drug dealer. But who are they targeting? Is it drug dealers?
It's beyond me because, they've said they want to, traditionally Jaguar owners were quite old, stuffy old men, really, and actually, most of them have died now. So they said they were looking for for really young, cool, rich people, to buy them. And the reality is, I don't know if they really exist. The average age of the car buyer around the world is 54. In fact, in the UK, for example, it might be even higher. And the average age of the Jag new car buyer is around that as well. So, trying to shift from that to like 20s and 30s is a massive ask. And are there young rich people who want to buy new cars? In this day and age, every city it's more designed for cycles than cars. I don't think petrol heads are such a big thing anymore. I think the desire for cars has sort of gone. The cars are all starting to look the same. I just question whether there is. I would like to see the research that proves there is demand amongst the younger audience.
Apparently, Jaguar's managing director said that they're looking to attract a new, younger audience with an all-electric range of brand new models, and I guess they must feel that these, that the electric crowd are different from the petrol crowd. But he also went on to say that he thought that the people most likely to be angered by the rebrand are no longer the target market, and I just wonder if that doesn't signal a death knell for a brand. When you have the managing director dissing his long-standing loyal customers and saying, I don't really mind if we piss you off.
That's a bit like a Gerard Ratner, isn't
it?
The Ratner, the jewelers, UK jewelers, who we mentioned before actually. He said his own jewellery was rubbish. Well, he was a bit more condescending than that, and it ruined his company.
I think disrespecting your loyal customers, the people who love your brand, it's an ingredient in this whole mix that really gives me pause, because I think that for me the thing that they're doing really wrong is the rebrand, who it's targeting, the logo, losing the cat. We're going to take a break and then we're going to come back and actually talk about the ad itself. But for me, the branding and signaling that they're kind of putting two fingers up to their loyal, customers feels really dangerous. Do you agree with that?
Where's the product in all this? Sorry, where's the product?
Where's the product?
That's what it's all about.
We're going to come back. We're going to come back and talk about the ad in a minute, which has Twitter or X on fire. We're going to look at some of the really hilarious things that are being said on social media and on mainstream media about the ad itself. We're going to talk about the ad. We're going to look at it creatively and say, we don't agree with what it's trying to do, but given what it is trying to do, is it going to be effective? Is it a good ad? Is everybody in the world, is all this outrage correct? And we'll be back in a minute to have that discussion. Don't go away.
Marketing Global Edition is sponsored by 𝐒𝐸𝐷𝐶, the ad generator for small businesses that serves you effective and affordable ads in seconds. And by 7 Brands, the international advertising and branding agency that has worked with clients around the world from Coca-Cola to Facebook.
Hello.
Okay, welcome back to Marketing Global Edition, where we are talking about the rebrand of Jaguar and the launch of its new ad. So, Piers, the ad, for those who haven't seen it, is quite extraordinary. First and foremost, in that it doesn't feature a car at all. In fact, there's a sort of empty space at the end where a car normally would be, and they're clearly trying to set out to do. You can see they're trying to set out to break all the norms of advertising, car advertising.
Everything.
And it's full of. The models are all kind of super cool, young, beautiful, but quite androgynous, if not non-binary, multicultural.
From another world. It's like Fifth Element. If anyone's seen that, it's a very unusual look and feel.
It's really unusual, and Twitter has gone nuts. I'm sorry, I'm still calling it Twitter. I can't take X seriously. There have been some really funny things. So I was having a look at Twitter and Threads, and somebody said, a person called JRIG, I don't know who that is, but I want to give them credit for their hilarious comment, said, can someone make me a bumper sticker that says, I bought this vehicle before the 2024 campaign? Hilarious. Somebody else just said, somebody called Huff, who is clearly in a huff, said, "Hi, I fixed your terrible ad. It took 2 minutes." And then has done a picture of a really scantily clad blonde woman in high heels leaning on a shiny car in front of a luxury house, which I think is quite funny. I mean, it's funny, and it's very true in that he has tapped into the kind of conventional vernacular of the car ad, which is shiny product, sexy woman, luxury cues, bish bash bosh. Somebody called Dean Johnson, who is clearly tapping into kind of Ford's much more masculine campaign, says Jaguar just saw Ford's Capri campaign and said, "Hold my beer." So, they're all, and somebody else, I think the media have really gone nuts. I mean, one of the other thing that somebody said, which I thought was hilarious, was that they thought that somehow this was evidence of parallel universes, and that this ad had clearly been launched in a parallel universe in which Kamala Harris had won the US presidential election and woke was still in. And it's really true that in kind of the Trump post-woke world, where America has signaled it's done with woke, I'm not sure this ad is going to have the effect that Jaguar think it is.
I'm sorry, I was just laughing so much. Yeah.
And then the media itself has gone really nuts. So there's one, people are talking about, like, Jaguar has decided to torpedo their hard-won reputation in a perplexingly unforced fashion, said The Spectator. And there is one newspaper here in the UK that you can always rely on to give the anti-woke point of view. So how did the Daily Mail react? Well, they went on to put in the boot personally on the brand director of Jaguar, Santino Pietrosanti. So they said, originally from the USA, Pietrosanti lives in a £975,000 house in Milton Keynes with his Scottish husband Paul, who he has been with for 12 years, and cockapoo Mia. Now, I don't know why the dog Mia has to be dragged into this. I want to be very clear that I don't think the cockapoo did anything wrong. I do, however, wonder at the wisdom of entrusting a prestige brand with an iconic visual heritage to somebody who voluntarily chose to live in Milton Keynes. Milton Keynes, I'm assuming that that's voluntary. If it's not, Milton Keynes, if you're keeping Pietrosanti hostage, let him go. I might start a hashtag let Pietro Santi go. Hashtag. But I feel sorry for the guy. I mean, we shouldn't be taking it out on him personally, but it's definitely a question. Is this going to be Jaguar's Bud Light moment?
I just don't know where to start. When I first saw it, I really wanted to defend it. I did, because, as I said, everyone just automatically slags things off in this day and age, and I thought it was a really brave thing to do, to try and pull the category forward and do something completely different for the world of car advertising. But with my bit more experience, it's like, well, but where's the car? You do need to show a car. And we were looking at sort of comparisons of because I was thinking, well, is all car advertising generic nowadays? And actually, Porsche have launched an ad today as well, same time. So
my goodness, I love the Porsche ad. All right, can you describe for our listeners the Porsche ad? And for anybody watching on YouTube, we're going to play it for you now. It does a beautiful job of showing the leather interiors of making you salivate over the car whilst also having a fun story about changing demographics and changing lives and so on. So, okay, totally, totally different. I think that the other thing that has certainly bothered our creative director, Hannah, and has bothered me as well is, is it really doing the job it says it is? So you appreciated it when you first saw it, which was very open-minded of you because everybody else I know hated it. And you appreciated it, as I gather, on the basis that it was kind of an iconoclast ad, right? It broke the rules of the category. And it did that by not showing a car, by having this very diverse cast, etc. But what bugs me and bugs Hannah is at the end of the ad, it says copy nothing. And yet it kind of seems to have copied everything. Okay, it didn't copy car ads because there isn't the ubiquitous, car driving around windy roads shot with sexy woman getting out of car. But it copied everything else that's going on right now. Everyone's on social media, everyone's talking about, how much it looks like Mid-Journey. It probably wasn't AI generated, but it has that vibe. It has that color saturated, futuristic vibe. It's doing the diversity and inclusivity thing to the max. It's doing sort of so many things that are just trends on social that it's just doing those. So it's not original. It's just not within the car category.
It's just bizarre.
And then
it's just bizarre. Sorry,
it's really bizarre. And I think there's this one shot of this young girl wearing this incredibly beautiful orange thing. I mentioned it before, and there's sort of wind blowing through the chiffon and stuff, and it's stunning. If they could have somehow made a story out of that, I would have been more interested in that. Whereas just throwing a bunch of kind of diverse, quirky models at us feels like Benetton. It feels like a fashion brand. It feels like a makeup brand, a perfume brand, and that sort of futuristic setting.
If they really are pivoting to become a fashion house, then
Right.
I understand, right? But they're not. They're launching a car on the
I don't
3rd
think
of
that's what they're
December.
doing. I think they're pivoting to become an electric vehicles brand, not a perfume brand. What it evokes to me, and this is interesting, I think when you say, yes, they're trying to be a more kind of lifestyle brand, I mean, it does evoke the Virgin Atlantic ad. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but the Virgin Atlantic ad, at least here in the UK, has kind of really kind of eclectic, quirky, norm challenging cast who challenge all sorts of norms to do with age, gender, perhaps sort of gender orientation, etc. But they do it in a way that's really Virgin, right? Because Virgin is an iconoclast brand. It's a challenging brand. And Virgin is a lifestyle brand that transcends categories. Jaguar, I don't know. I don't understand why to me, they're British. And this doesn't feel particularly British. This feels like the multicultural sort of miasma of like diversity in the TikTok, Instagram kind of world.
Yeah, they were always known for their beautiful British racing green colour. There are some fantastic. I mean, cars are about deep heritage, car brands, deep heritage history and stories, and it's just they're just smashing all that up. They really are, as the ad shows, putting a hammer to everything, which is it's brave, but I suppose we're all worried that it is foolish.
Fine line between bravery and foolishness, and I think this crosses it. I really do. And they've thrown everything away. They've chucked out their logo bonkers. They've got this new. The other thing we didn't mention about the typeface is they've put in the word Jaguar. They've put the G in capital letters, so that the thing that hits you when you look at it is the word goo. It's like the goo emerges from the Jaguar. There is no respect for anything that has gone before, and I think that's going to really upset the people who love them and who own a Jaguar.
But they are declining. The brand's declining. The sales are declining hugely. The current identity, why keep things if you're dying?
Well, I think that dying faster is not necessarily a virtue either.
Yeah, fair enough.
I can understand the need for a rebrand. I'm not saying don't rebrand. I'm not saying don't refresh. I'm not saying don't move with the times. I think it would be really interesting to see somebody answer a very interesting question, which is, what is the role that car brands are going to play in people's lives in a post-petrol world? Like, does electric change the game for car brands? And if so, okay, if it changes the target demographic, great. If it tell us about that and show us why we're going to buy an electric vehicle. This just feels so self-referential. And, you know, when you read about the kind of the press event that they had, which was embargoed until today, and all the journalists are now talking about it, it feels like this is the result of some egomania within Jaguar. Like, somebody somewhere has got the bit between their teeth and decided on something really bonkers, and like they just became an unstoppable force. And I don't know if that's who that was, or whether you can lay blame one person.
Like that, isn't it?
But it feels like nobody stopped and said, hang on a minute, is this really relevant to our future customers? This feels like something that was self-referential, that's a discourse that Jaguar are having with itself.
It's a very weird thing, because what they really should have done is, it's all about the product. If you're dying, you need fantastic products, you know. And they've got fantastic new electric products coming out that are going to be a lot more expensive. But
tell us about those.
Tell us, show us. Why not launch and show the car rather than have this complete repositioning and then do it?
Well, apparently they can't really, because, you know, it's not coming out for. I mean, I think they're going to show the vehicle soon, but apparently they're not really basically putting the cars on the road. So that for the next 12 months, Marketing Week had a great line. They said, for the next 12 months, perhaps longer, the company will make nothing but headlines. And if they're not making cars and they want to make headlines, mission accomplished, because here we all are talking about it. So I think it's a disaster from a branding point of view. I think it's a disaster from an advertising point of view. From a PR perspective, they just generated an enormous amount of free media, and I applaud that, if nothing else. And I think we should come back once the car itself is launched and do a follow-up and see if actually they've managed to change our minds once the product launches, and whether we're all going, you know what, we were completely crazy to be so outraged and offended. It all makes sense.
I think I agree with you. I think the PR it's genius if that's what they wanted. I mean, everyone's talking about it. I agree with that. But I think it's all going to be to do with what they're going to unveil with this new car. And I think there is an opportunity. If they unveil the new version of their iconic E-Type, as an example, and it's now electric, that thing will sell. But I worry it won't be.
If any of our lovely listeners, or I'm sure most of our listeners are lovely, if any non-lovely listener was thinking about trolling us because of anything we've said in this particular podcast, I'd like to read you a quote from a chap called Autopap, who obviously was supporting Jaguar's decision, because he said, bloody hell, I think Jaguar owe me a test drive after the support I gave them yesterday. The abuse I got was both hilarious and troubling. It's an ad, get a grip. So with those words, we will see you again, same time, same place next week. Thank you so much for your company. Please don't troll us. It's an ad, get a grip. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.